And learning a language can definitely be overwhelming, but to stop you giving up after just a few weeks, simply look at it as though you're building a puzzle, or Lego if that's your thing, i.e. collecting different words and seeing how they fit together to eventually have you sounding like Antonio Banderas or Salma Hayek. Now, if that sounds good to you, please join me and allow me to introduce you to some useful pieces. We're going to start with a basic hello, which is hola. In Spanish, the H is silent, so you don't pronounce it. It's not hola, it's just hola. The next phrase is buenos dias, and when broken down, the literal meaning is good days. But in English, this is just good morning. Buenos dias. The next phrase is buenas tardes, which when broken down, we have buena, which once again means good, and tardes, which means afternoon. Notice here that the word for good, buenas, in good afternoon, is spelt with an A, whereas for good morning, it's spelt with an O, buenos dias. This is because there's a masculine and feminine component to Spanish. In this example, we have the word for day, dia, which is masculine, and the word for afternoon, tardes, which is feminine. As a result, when saying good morning, we have to use the masculine version of good, i.e. with an O, buenos. And for good afternoon, we have to use the feminine version of good, buenas. And finally, we have good evening or good night. In Spanish, this is buenas noches, literally good night. And you can see we use buenas with an A, and that's because noches is a feminine word. It's also worth noting that in Spanish-speaking countries, people also just say buenas in order to greet you. Buenas. Right, let's move on and learn how to say nice to meet you. A popular way would be mucho gusto. Mucho gusto. Another way to say this would be encantada de conocerte. And if you're male, encantado de conocerte. Encantada de conocerte. And just a note, if you want to pronounce it the way people from Spain do, it would be encantada de conocerte. This C here is a th sound, conocerte. And to make it easier, you can just say encantada or encantado if you're a male. This is a good time to introduce and talk about our first verb, conocer. Conocer, and this means to meet, or it can mean to know a place, person, or thing. The first person present tense, i.e. I know, would be conozco, conozco, and the second person present tense, you know, would be conoces, conoces. Now notice the Z in conozco is pronounced like an S, conozco, and that's if you're learning the accent from Latin America. If you're learning the accent from Spain, it would be conozco, conozco. And you know, conoces, would be conoces in Spain. We've already seen a use for this verb when introducing yourself to someone, encantada de conocerte. You can use the first person, conozco, to express that you have at some point been to or visited a country. For example, if I was speaking to someone and wanted to tell them that I have been to France or visited France, I would say, yo conozco Francia. The literal translation is I know France, but it sounds more natural to say this in Spanish. And finally, we have the second person, conoces, conoces, which can be used as either a statement or in Spanish can also be used as a question if you change the inflection at the end. For example, if you wanted to say, do you know Bob? It would be, conoces a Bob? There is no do at the front the way it is in English. Now we're going to do a quick recap of everything that we just covered, but before then, let's note down things to remember. So the first thing is that the H in Spanish is silent. Just forget that it exists. Don't pronounce it. And the second is that the nouns in Spanish are either masculine or feminine. The rule of thumb, if it ends in A, it's normally feminine. If it ends in O, it's masculine. However, we have seen in today's episode that that isn't always the case, as we have the word dia ends in A, but is actually masculine. So, just be careful. Right, so we've learned 10 new words and 6 new phrases. Let's test to see how many we can remember. How do we say hello? That's right. Hola. How do we say good morning? Buenos días. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Good evening. Buenas noches. How do we say nice to meet you? Encantada de conocerte, or encantado if you're male. Another way to say nice to meet you? Mucho gusto. Mucho gusto. And finally, what was the verb we learned today? Conocer. Conocer. Or in Spain, conocer. Conocer. And what's the first person present tense of this? Conozco. Conozco. Or conozco. And the second person present tense, you know? Conoces. Conoces. Or conoces. And that's it. You've got your first few pieces to your Spanish language puzzle. My advice to you would be to repeat these words throughout the day. I'm talking in the shower, when you're cooking, when you're in that boring meeting at work. Just keep repeating. Repeat, repeat, repeat. I hope you found this useful, and if so, please like and subscribe and join me for the next introductions installment and add to your Spanish language puzzle. Ciao for now. Hasta luego.